Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Sales Manager Academy podcast. As always, I'm your host Omar, and we talk about sales leadership in the retail world, specifically in the boutique retail. What does that mean? We're talking about smaller companies, smaller retail spaces like wireless retail, AV, appliances, typically spaces where we don't have a lot of employees working. Um, and there's so much that's going on, so much that happens that it's kind of hard to not only keep track of everything that's going on, but also try to stay on top of all the changes and still feel like you're not running around like a chicken with your head cut off, trying to get everything on pace and in order. Okay. Um, and today, one of the things I want to talk about, we've been talking about, right, is compensation, training, so forth. Today, we're going to be talking about some of the myths when it comes to the comp plan. Okay, especially like anything with high margin or high dollar, how that could be a misconception for a lot of people that don't understand how the compensation works. Okay, your reps sometimes think that the hardware sell is enough. That that's going to be what makes their bread, what makes their commission, and you guys know that that's not the case. Okay, uh, you know, volume doesn't necessarily always mean that they're going to be making money, that they're going to be earning good commissions. It's not. And, for instance, wireless retail, device margin, we know this. We don't get paid on devices nowadays. There's really no money there, especially for the seller. And a lot of times, the commission, the bonus, the incentives from the retailer, from the carrier to the retailer, comes in the form of the actual rate plans that are sold as well as the features that are attached to it, right? What level of rate plan are we adding it onto? Is it a gross add? Is it an upgrade? Uh, that's really what they care about. What other accessories? What other features are we adding on to the cell? That's where the big compensation is going to come from, not from just selling a high-end device on the lowest rate plan as an upgrade. I know some of you guys don't get paid on upgrades, okay, especially if you're coming from the corporate world. You just don't. And some authorized retailers just don't pay that, okay? Not all of them are the same. Now, there is a myth, I'll tell you this right now. If you're working for a wireless retailer, uh, and especially if authorized, and they're telling you that they don't get paid, they don't get compensated on upgrades, but they still want you to do upgrades, they still get compensated on upgrades. They're just not giving you the money because for them, they just don't see the benefit. But they're still getting paid for it, and you still could be getting paid for it, but apparently they just don't care. um, but that's the big thing. In other aspects, right, when you're talking about other spaces like appliances, AV, even furniture world, you would be surprised how sometimes some people think that the high dollar ticket's going to have the best commission ratio, uh, but it's not true. I've sold plenty of projectors, I've sold plenty of high end appliances, and I know the margin on them. And I've seen it, and it's just not the case. You would be surprised how sometimes a mid range, right? Because you have your luxury, you have your premium stuff. And some of the premium stuff, because luxury is your top end, high end, some of the premium stuff would actually carry better margin overall. It would be easier to sell, and you can do more of the premium than you would of the luxury, right? And that was always the case that I saw. And once I got my team on board with it, they would sell luxury, right? Because it would be worth it to sell it. But the amount of time it took sometimes to sell a luxury item compared to selling a premium package, they could sell 10 to 15 different premium packages to one luxury package. They're just moving it, right? Whereas before they would struggle with both, and they would spend more time trying to sell the luxury item and lose the sell when they could have spent more time pushing the premium, getting the customer something that they were happy with and they were going to be ecstatic about, and then them themselves moving that transaction, moving that relationship forward to the next step, which is the purchasing step. Okay, so that's what you have to learn as a leader, is how to get your people to understand the differences and to not get bogged down and stuck on trying to sell things that just is going to be truly a waste of their time. I'm not saying that luxury items are a waste. I'm saying that your team needs better training on realizing what and how to sell those products. And when they're not there, they could try it, but you need to understand their limitations and you need to coach and train them up so that they understand when to bring somebody in so that one, they don't lose that sale. Two, most importantly, you don't lose the customer faith because the moment that happens, that customer is no longer coming back to that location and they're not going to be referring anybody. They're going to be telling people to stay away from those locations. And that's what you need to understand. And that's where a lot of people fail. As a leader in leadership, and I'm not just saying at the store leader level, I'm saying all the way up to the executive level. They don't truly understand and grasp that. And they think, it's nothing. They're going to come back. It's like, no, they might go back to a location, but it's not going to be your company. It's not going to be yours. You've just lost somebody there. And that's a very hard pill to swallow as a leader. But you have to understand that aspect. You have to get your team trained up to understand that. And learning the compensation, learning the differences, and being upfront about what pays the best, what pays the fastest for them is important. Because that also allows them to be able to focus on the things that they're going to see most often faster. When you train them up on interactions that they're not going to see very often, that they're going to see maybe once in a blue moon, that's not something worth anybody's time. It's a waste of your employees' time. It's a waste of your customers' time because obviously they're not going to see them. They might see them once a month, once every 3 to 6 months realistically. So don't train on those. That's not going to be, inducive to anybody. It's a waste of everybody's time. Don't be that leader. Okay? You have to understand your comp plan. You have to get your people to understand their comp plan. Focus on the things that matter. Focus on what your new hires are going to see the most often, because then that allows them to be able to help with the majority of the people coming in. And it's okay for them to let customers know, like, hey, sorry, I would love to help you. I'm just not very trained in that particular aspect. I do have one of my other associates that can, but I can help you in this respect. And if they say, you know what, thank you for that. Yeah, sure, help me. Good. But when they say, okay, you know what, thank you for that, I'm going to wait for somebody else. All right, cool. You're going to want to talk to so-and-so. And then I, as a seller, I would train them. And this is what I've done in the past. I would train them to make sure that they coach the person that's going to be going into that interaction so that they know, like, hey, hey, Joe, I got a customer at so-and-so, right? Mr., Mrs., whatever, or Mr., whatever. Hey, they're going to be waiting for you. They have questions on this. They're like, okay. They know I can't help them with that. I'm going to go take the next customer up. Boom. The customer feels better because now they understand that, hey, that individual couldn't necessarily help me with it, but they got somebody for me. I'm going to be taken care of. Boom. It's things like that that make a difference in how not just customers feel about the locations, but also how sellers feel. Because they understand, you know what, I'm not there yet. And they are taking the onus because they want to get better. They will learn to get there. But they also need to understand their limitations. And we have to understand that because then that also stops us from limiting everybody's earning potential. Because when you tell everybody, oh yeah, you're a shark. Yeah, they might be able to do it. But now they're going through 10, 20 interactions to close one when they could have gone through 5 interactions to close one. Think about that. How much business would you have lost? How much business would you have lost even if they closed it? Because when they're unsure of things and they don't know, yeah, they might be able to close it, but there's still so much left on the table, so many questions unasked, so much potential to be able to really build that relationship with the client and the customer for future business. But hey, you want them to rush through a sell because you're not willing to train and coach them up. That's not leadership. That's failure. That's, as a person in leadership, that means you're failing people. And then when you're firing and trying to hire people, and you keep telling and saying, oh, it's the people I'm hiring, they just don't want to work, they just don't want to bring the effort. No. You're failing them as an organization. You're failing them as leadership. That's what it comes down to. You have to get beyond that. And in the next episode, I'm going to talk about that in a bit. But right now, right, we're talking about training and developing people up. And this is part of it. The compensation, them knowing how they get paid, what to focus on, is super important. And you're like, hey, but Omar, we got to train them to, really go through the interaction and focus on everybody as individuals. Yes, I get that. I have been there as an individual contributor, as a leader of a group, as a leader of a division. Yeah, I get that. The truth of the matter is that the majority of cells we're going to have are going to fall in certain um, realms, right? They're going to fall into certain specific type of cells. And when our team understands that, and they're like, oh, okay, everybody wants to feel like they're different. Statistically speaking, everybody falls into different kind of buckets. It makes it easier for people to really narrow things down. And when you're giving the product information and training them, it helps them to truly understand and start grasping everything together. And that's where there's a big disconnect with leaders because they don't understand the process of training and developing their people. They think the individual should bring that to the organization. It's like, no, they're bringing a level to it, but you still have to connect everything with them because there's so much that they don't know. They don't know. Even if they're from the same fucking industry, because every organization is different in how they do things. And that is, as somebody who comes in with experience, is the most aggravating thing when you're asking and asking and asking and not giving damn answers to do it. Okay? I've shared how I was with an organization that I thought was going to be a great organization, and I kept asking for the commission structure, for the pay structure before I got hired on, and they said it was proprietary. When I got hired on, I asked for it. Oh, you're not there yet because you have 12 months before this will apply to you. It's like, okay, that's great. I still want to know what the compensation structure is like so I know what I'm focusing on is actually what I should be focusing on. Like, I have no direction from anybody in the company besides go get business. I need to know what pays me the best to focus on for not just me, but also the organization and then the partners. Because if I'm focusing on building great relationships with partners and their pay isn't going to be the best, like I have to do 30 times the work to be able to close one that's only going to pay me a tenth of what I could be making, like it's not conducive to anybody. It's a waste of my time. It's a waste of your time as the organization, right? I kid you not. Around 6 months later is when I found what the compensation structure was like. And it wasn't even from my direct manager, even though I'd been asking every single month. It was from their leader. And needless to say, I was very truly upset when I saw the compensation structure and what it paid. It was ridiculous. Like, I could have spent my time better off somewhere else. Because I was like, okay, like, yeah, the base might be okay for now, but the compensation structure is bullshit. Like, it's a waste of my time. It's a waste of your time. And that's what you have to understand, right? Don't withhold the things that matter. Compensation structure is a very important driver, but also understanding how to get people to that, how to get them to focus to what their goals should be. Okay? And if you're wondering, well, why aren't my sellers selling? The number one is always they don't understand, they don't grasp and truly understand the compensation structure. They know it. They know I get paid X dollars for this, but they can't tell you how they can make a $2, $3, $5, $6, $7,000 commission check with it. They have no roadmap. They have no direction. And as a leader, you have to give them that direction. You have to give them that roadmap so that they can become great at what they're doing and have a heading, have a direction. It's super important to do that, okay? Because that also matters in how they start to offer not just the products that they're mainly selling, but also the add-ons, the features, the protections, the warranties. It starts to make a lot more sense as to why we're also doing this. Okay, it makes a huge difference. Okay, and a lot of that, as for us as leaders, is going to be data driven because we have to understand what our teams are selling the most. What is the average item that we sell or the average package that we sell the most of? We have to know that kind of stuff. As a company, it'll be a certain thing. But for you in your region, in your area, you need to understand what that is because it's going to be different what the company's is going to be. It is hands down going to be different what the organization is going to be because you're a different sector of the market. I have been there. Okay, there are going to be a lot of side areas that are going to be very similar to what the company is doing, but I guarantee you that your location, you find out what they are, and you'll be like, okay, this is slightly different than what I thought. So we have to adjust to this because it's not like we're going to get in line with what the company is pushing on. It's that we're going to be focusing on this because this is really what's driving the most. And then we start getting our footing. Okay. Your sellers definitely know this. If you don't spend a lot of time on the floor, your sellers definitely know a lot of this. So you need to really lean on them because they're the unseen leaders or the unsung leaders on the floor of the company, of the organization, of the location. You need to do that. Okay, you need to understand your team's strengths, their weaknesses, as well as yours as a leader. Super, super important. Okay, because when they don't know what the majority of the items that we're selling are, that's a big red flag. That means you have untrained people, you have new people, you have people you can't truly rely on. And as a leader, that's the scariest thing because I can't go on vacation knowing that my team doesn't understand this part because then I know sales aren't going to happen unless I'm there badgering them. And as a leader, that's the last thing you want to do. You need to first build them up for them to be able to have that. You can't just throw them in the middle of the ocean and be like, okay, you guys figure it out, sink or swim. Whoever swims is good. Whoever sinks, we're going to fire. You're never going to have anything that's repeatable that way. And what we talk about is building repeatable systems so that you as leaders can have an easier life. Your teams can have a better life as well because it's less stress, and less stress means it's less work. Even though they're still working, it feels like it's less work because it's more fluid. And that's super important, guys. Super, super important. Okay? Uh, and guys, right now, in the type of economy that we're in, it's going to matter a lot. Okay? You can't right now go around thinking that, okay, well, we're just going to get a boost. This is going to be one of the worst fourth quarters we're going to see in a very long time. If you thought 2020 was bad for retail, okay, this is going to be worse. I've talked about it, I've mentioned it, and based on everything I've seen, and I'm going to make an episode on this, guys, I swear. It's actually going to be the next episode, okay? So if you guys want more information, you guys want to learn a little bit more about this particular aspect of it, tune into the next episode. It'll be live next week. Might actually push it a little bit sooner, okay? But it is super important because you guys do not understand. If you think that you're going to ride the coattails and be super good at what happens, I'll tell you this right now. It's going to be tough for a lot of organizations, tough for a lot of people in retail, tough for a lot of people in the service industry, especially if you're in boutique, okay? If you guys don't know what boutique is, go look it up. That's not you, okay? But it's going to be tough in that aspect because people are going to be holding and, hunkering down. Because when we can't trust the numbers coming out of the government, because it's based on how somebody feels, instead of like these are the cold, hard numbers, right? Because I knew something was off when the numbers were coming out and they were still rosy good. And then when the actual numbers just dropped a few days ago, that was like, okay. For the last few months, all the jobs reports were adjusted down. And for the last 3 months, we've added less than 30, I think it's less than 35,000 jobs. We have to have at least, I think the number's like around 100 to 150,000 jobs a month added to be able to maintain and sustain growth. More importantly, to maintain, right? So we're going to be in for a world of hurt. And if you as a leader are not training and developing your people right now, you're not going to find rock star people to come on board because there's a big disconnect on everything. So I'm going to leave that there, okay? Because you as a leader need to look in the mirror and say, am I ready to do this? Because it is time to focus on training. It is time to focus on helping people get better at what they do by coaching them, by training them, by helping them level up. That is our job as leaders, and that's what we must do. And if you do that, I'm not saying you're going to come out unscathed, but you're going to come out in better shape than you were before. That is one of the biggest things. Okay? That is one of the biggest things. So keep that in mind. And guys, remember, focus on training, developing, and it's going to go a very long way. I'm going to leave it there for today's episode. I am going to talk a little bit more on the next one about not just the jobs report, but kind of what we're going to more likely see and experience coming down the pipe. Because unfortunately, it's going to hurt us. But let's do what we can to make sure it doesn't hit as hard for our people. Because it's not just you and your family, but it's also your teams, their families, that we have to keep an eye out and protect. All right, guys. I want to say thank you once again for spending time with us here at the Sales Manager Academy podcast. As always, I'm your host, Omar, and I'll catch you on the next one.